Good evening and welcome to A Slice of Life. I'm your host, Jim Therian. In your town, there are many commissions that do the job of running different organizations within the town. One of them is the Conservation Commission. And I have the Old Saybrook representative from the Conservation Commission here with us tonight to talk about what the Old Saybrook Conservation Commission does. Christine, welcome to A Slice of Life.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What is it that the Conservation Committee does?
Well, there's a number of things. I would say first, by just way of a really quick introduction, I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission, and there are 7 members that come from the community, oftentimes recruited by either the Board of Selectmen or people on the committee themselves. And they get voted in by the Board of Selectmen and serve a 2-year term. So it's formal in that sense in terms of it is a commission, but we are more an advisory body and not a regulatory body in any kind of way. And from that perspective, there's guidelines. The state of Connecticut actually has sort of a statute that a town can have a Conservation Commission. Many don't. I was thinking about this coming over here. I wish I knew the statistics, because I think when people hear we have a Conservation Commission in Old Saybrook, they're like, wow, we don't. I wish we did. But so a lot of the things that we do are primarily around education. Our committee, and at least our commission, and the interest that we have is a lot about educating the community and townspeople on environmental issues. And one of our primary things that we do is monitoring the open space. So a big part of that for us is primarily with Great Cedars, the property that the town acquired a number of years ago that kind of is adjunct to the preserve. And so part of our open space part is working with Parks and Rec and Land Trust and going in there. We mark trails, we may do some maintenance, and we're looking to join that property with the preserve at some point. So that's kind of the open space. The other thing I would say about that is that if anyone has ever looked at our GIS maps that are on the town website, the town is blessed with a lot of open public space.
Yes, it is.
A lot of it gets donated by a private owner who may inherited a field or whatever and no longer wants it, and they just don't need it anymore or whatever. And so the monitoring of that is really going around and making sure there's not trash. A lot of it is not used in any kind of way, but it does preserve just kind of the nice open field that we have, that we're not constantly building up with every piece of property that can become available. Some of the other education pieces that we do, we had a big, over the last 2 or 3 years, a lot on what was called the 3 R's, the recycle, reuse, and reduce, yeah. And so really trying to get the public into thinking around how do I reduce my trash? It's not just recycling. I think some of those listening may be aware of, and I know you are, Jim, the issues that the state has with our trash at Hartford, and right now we're trucking it all out. So any little bit that we can get people to reduce what they throw away. So we've been pretty involved in trying to do little articles, in the events magazine, and sometimes in the Harbor View or the Harbor News, and doing educational things with the library. One that we did, it's not necessarily around anything with the 3 R's, that was some of the things we did in the last probably 3 years. More recently is we hosted a talk on invasive species with the Acton Public Library, and did that with Kathy Connolly, who I think a lot of people know, who just is an amazing source of information on all things gardening and all things invasive.
Yes.
But it was well attended, and again, it was really around just what are the invasives in your yard. It wasn't coming at it from a big, like, oh, how do we go to some park or whatever. It's like, how can we, our individual people, be aware of how we can reduce, get rid of invasives in our yards. And I'm trying to think, some of the other, the other educational things that we've done. Well, I would say that I mentioned the 7 members on the committee, and I should also say that we always have a representative from the high school, generally from the Ecology Club.
Right.
And it's really wonderful to have a student rep because they often tell us what they're doing. We try to line some of our activities with them, like if it's a, cleaning up the beaches, what they're active doing every year in part of the coastal cleanup and Earth Day activities. So we do try to keep in touch with what they're doing and how could we partner better. The other educational piece that we do every year, and it's kind of a small thing, you don't always see how it makes a difference, but we donate a number of books to the Acton Library Children's Library, all around environment. They'll give us a list of things that they can get, and we'll buy the books that, can be, just run the gamut of anything around, pollinators and, conservation and sort of, water, all of that. So that's a little bit, sort of in a really broad brushstrokes of what we do.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Education is incredibly important. And in my experience at the transfer station, my general feeling is that people really want to do something. They want to do something positive. They just oftentimes don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
And so education truly is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I know personally, it can get overwhelming when you see, pictures of all the plastic in the ocean. It's heartbreaking, the things that you can see out there, and you think, well, what do I do?
Right.
But then you just kind of take it to like, okay, what can I do in my own little home to reduce the amount of plastic that I use? And, we did a little bit of research, and one of our neighbors, one of our members counted, how much plastic containers he had in his kitchen. And I think I would challenge anyone to do that. You'd be amazed. But we have them, and let's use them instead of the Ziploc bags that so easily get thrown away.
Right.
And so, you write an article about that. And the first time I read one, I'm like, well, yes, why don't I use all of my Tupperware instead of, reaching for the easy, Ziploc bag in the drawer and throw it away. And so little things like that. The thin film, recycling is huge because a lot of it you get from the store you can't control.
Right.
But, that I think you can take it to the bins at Stop and Shop and Big Y, and, they try to recycle it in another different way than how you can just recycle the regular, stuff that gets taken to the trash or picked up. But
now, in dealing, granted, we're going to be talking about the Old Saybrook Conservation Commission tonight, but I'm sure some of the other towns that have commissions are doing similar things. What has the commission done lately in terms of projects or accomplishments?
Let's see, lately I would say that probably the most recent one we did put in, well, we kind of got on sort of the whole, the pollinator pathway that, I think everybody's hearing about. And so we did put in a pollinator garden down by the Vicki Duffy Pavilion. So 2 of the gardens that used to have just the beach roses, we worked with Parks and Rec, and they took them out, and we put in some pollinator plants. We worked with the high school students who actually did the research for all the plants, and I mean, they did an amazing job. This was like about a year and a half or so ago.
Right.
So that's new. And the other piece that I think we're going to do, which I want to put a plug in since hopefully this will be aired in time, is on July 10th. We're doing a program, as I mentioned, we did a, co-hosted with the Acton Library. We're doing another one around home composting.
Right.
And so, again, as far as what can, an individual do to, try to reduce the amount of waste that goes in your trash can, you can try to compost at home. And so we have a gentleman who's coming who's a master composter and is really knowledgeable, and I think hopefully people will be able to get a lot of good information on how they can just easily compost at home.
I actually, you asked me to make a brief presentation there about the town's transfer station and how we're composting. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, I think it'll be, I should say that it's from 6:30 to 7:30 at the library on Monday, the July 10th. So we're doing that. The other things that we've been working on are, let's see, I'm trying to, I think one of our challenges is that we always have a lot of ideas, but there's only 7 of us, and at any given time, sometimes we're down a member, although we're close to being full, which is
Right.
really great. And I think it's, we have to sort of set our priorities, but I think, this year we've been more focusing on the composting piece and the waste. And we're going to try to promote the Plastics Free July program again at the composting seminar that we have
Yep.
coming up.
I went actually to your website and I printed off the mission statement. And under the mission statement is like about 18 different things or areas that the Conservation Commission is involved or tasked with doing something about it. And so there's a lot of stuff that the commission does. It's just incredible.
Well, I think over time, like I've been on the commission since, this will be my 6th year. So I joined when I retired. And I think in the past, more focus was sort of on the open space part.
Right.
And so we've branched out a little bit more, into just more of the, sort of the broader environment, as I said, the recycling, and it's sort of, I don't want to say it's necessarily the hot topic of the day, because that's not really fair, but at the same time, we sort of pick the things that are utmost on people's mind, like the pollinator garden, for example.
Right. I went to a Conservation Commission meeting, I think 2 meetings ago, and the person in charge was doing seemed to be focusing on invasive plants. And that is just an enormous task.
Yeah. We have not, other than the education piece, we haven't had a specific project ourselves to, go out and try to get rid of invasives. I think, again, it's just sort of that education part of
That's a huge
reminding
undertaking.
people. I think, there are some definite efforts going on in the preserve that Kathy Connolly leads of, getting rid of some of the invasives in there.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the preserve, because in the minutes of one of the last meetings, there's something called the Preserve Management Committee.
Yeah.
And what does that do? Does that actually go out to the preserve, the 1,000 acres out there? And
No, actually, that committee was formed when the town bought the property in conjunction with the state.
Yep.
And so that is, it's formed. It has the selectmen, representatives from the state. So it's a pretty small body, but basically they meet around quarterly to just talk about the preserves. Like right now, there's been a big focus on having to remap the trails because the mountain bikers go in and sort of create new ones, but it's also been a big biological study on looking at the vernal pools in there.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's just a gold mine of interesting plants and sort of the flora and fauna, the biodiversity. And so we're really trying to work hard with the state to preserve that, because we want people to come and walk. We want you to, it's okay to have your dogs and all of that, but at the same time, it's making sure that the trails are not put in a place where it's really going to endanger, a biodiversity.
right. I think keeping away from the vernal ponds
Yeah.
is extremely important.
Yeah.
And there's salamanders, there's newts,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of little wildlife in there. And
Yeah, there's they just completed another study, which probably should be public at some point as they polish it up. But so the CMC they do meet quarterly, so it is really more of the town, the selectmen, and the state. I go to the meetings just when I can,
Yeah.
but I'm not a member.
I think it's important that we emphasize that they may be having a great time out there on their quads, but they're really damaging a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah,
And chances are they really don't know what they're damaging. They're just joyriding, having a great time. And I would imagine they'd have driven through vernal ponds, which would just be awful if they do that.
Yeah. Well, quads are technically not supposed to. Any motorized type of vehicle is not allowed in the preserve.
Right.
Short of having some sort of surveillance there. It's hard, but I think it's primarily the mountain bikers. But I think there is an ad hoc committee that I sit on that is made of representative from Westbrook, Essex, and also Old Saybrook, and we sort of work in conjunction with the CMC and, you know, try to make sure that these studies are done and the right communication is happening. And we have a member on there who is an active mountain biker himself and has really tried to get back to the mountain biking community to...
Right. Well, I know that the Old Saybrook Police Force has 2 quads that they go out and, occasionally they patrol.
Yeah.
I don't know any more information than that, but
Yeah.
it's nice that they actually go out there and try to do something. So, next, open space monitoring. What is that all about?
Well, it's technically, as I'd mentioned earlier, you know, there's a lot of open space throughout the town of Old Saybrook, and so we are supposed to go out, you know, on occasion and just walk some of that property, make sure that there isn't anything untoward happening on it, making sure that there isn't, you know, garbage getting thrown, and so yeah, it's,
well, there's
you know,
more than likely there's garbage out there.
Yeah, and again, I think what we've been a little lax in doing that, primarily because the town and the land use department has been working on updating that whole list and getting it all mapped out in the GIS, and so that we can actually see it better, because I think it just was outdated for what was available. So I think that's been completed, and we actually just need to make a plan as to how do we want to go out. Because again, we're a small body, but we would prioritize the bigger pieces and those that might be more public access.
Now, when you monitor open space, does that include, like, say you're monitoring a meadow, does that include pulling out oak tree sprouts just to keep the successional progression at bay, or you just let it go?
No, it's really just making sure that I think nothing untoward is happening on the land. It's really just, it's not.
Campfires, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. What about future projects? Of those 18 things, how do you decide what you're going to put your limited workforce on?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the interest of the members. We just have recently gotten 3 new members and about to get 4. And so it's really nice to have some new ideas and new blood in the group. You know, so I think we do make goals every year. We kind of do it more around a calendar than a fiscal year. But we do try to set like some goals around, you know, what is it that we want to do with the education piece and the monitoring, anything that, you know, we actively want to do, say, in Great Cedars. I would mention that one of the things that kind of guides us a little bit in what we want or focus on is the Sustainable CT, so the Sustainable Connecticut. So Old Saybrook got the Silver Award 2 years ago, and they now are having to reapply and, you know, do all these various activities, and so you get points for different things that you do. So we really try to align with, you know, what we can do within our purview as a Conservation Commission to, you know, help us get that sustainable designation again. So that often is around education piece, pollinator gardens, sponsoring, you know, events and stuff. So, you know, they are pretty specific in what we have to do in order to get that.
Yeah, I did get that impression.
Yeah,
that
they
there
are
was something very, very particular you had to do to get that qualification.
Yeah, and it runs the gamut from, I mean, not just environmental things, but, you know, sort of green and buildings and all that sort of thing. So it's pretty extensive. But that does, you know, having said that, it does guide a little bit what we do. Also, we contributed to the conservation plan that was just recently getting updated through the whole town. We had a consultant come in and work on that. And so I think once that is finalized, there's a lot of things listed in there that I think not just the Conservation Commission, but, you know, Parks and Rec, land use, planning, you know, economic development, that's going to sort of guide us in a path over the next 5 to 10 years.
So can you say that you work with multiple agencies, commissions, committees?
We do. We try to sit in on land use, Parks and Rec, the the Preserve Ad Hoc Committee that I mentioned to you, the Wetlands Committee, Inland Wetlands Committee, and just to hear what's going on with them, because if there is an opportunity that we can partner and do things, because I found when I first joined that there was sometimes overlap. We would be doing something and somebody would eventually say, oh wait, I think Parks and Rec is working on that.
Yeah.
And so I think where we can sort of lend, you know, our support, or even if it's just going to something like, you know, the land use does regular cleanup, every once a month on a Saturday.
Yeah.
They'll pick an area to sort of do the invasive thing. So it's not a requirement, but you know, we can participate in that. So I think we do try to stay attuned as to what's going on with the other groups, and but you know, it is a good question, because I think we do struggle with sometimes where do we put, you know, our small efforts. But right now, I'd say that, you know, I think one of the things we've been working on that's been dragging on a little bit is we'd love to put in a more public access for putting in kayaks into the sound.
Right.
But that's been a bit of a challenge, finding the right space. I mean, right now, I think it's pretty limited, other than when people have their own private little spots or whatever.
Right.
But you know, putting up a rack where people could actually store their kayaks and be able
Like
to go in
at
easily, yeah.
Sheffield Street?
Yeah,
Down by, what is it,
like
the
another
North
one.
Cove?
Yeah, another Sheffield Street. Yeah.
I think that would be a really good idea.
Yeah.
Kayaking seems to be taking off, and a lot of people get out there and enjoy it.
Yeah, tonight we have a perfect spot around here to be able to do that.
Now, what do you need from the public? Do you need anything from the public?
Well, you know, I think it's just it's probably for the public to pay attention to when they do see an article, or even if it's not just from, you know, from the Conservation Commission. It's a Kathy Connolly, it's a Judy Preston, you know, who you had as a guest here. They write frequently in a lot of different, you know, publications that get out. And I think anytime you see anything having to do with the environment, and particularly with the town and what they can do to make it achievable, I think is just paying attention, you know, like it is. Coming to hearing about the composting, and okay, if you don't really want to do home composting, you'll talk about what they can bring to the transfer station.
Right.
You know, so I think it's just the building that, having that awareness that we all need to work hard to do what we can to conserve our planet, you know. And
I believe no truer words were spoken, so thank you very much for that. I would say, you know, get interested, get involved, stay involved.
Yeah.
And involvement even means just reading an article.
Yeah.
Watching the minutes on YouTube. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ways that you can actually participate without actually going out and pulling up roots and
that's right.
getting dirty and stuff. There's just so much room for improvement. And it's just, I imagine with a staff of 7 people, you probably need a lot of volunteers.
Yeah, well, and I think it depends. Yeah, I think we haven't had any huge events to need a lot of volunteers, but I think it's just, again, sort of those little tiny steps that, you know, you can make. I'd love to bring up, you know, one example, and as I was reviewing all of my notes from the past number of years that I've been on the commission, that one of the things that we did when I first joined was went to the big stores like Stop and Shop and Big Y to find out what they were going to try to do to eliminate using plastic bags when you shop.
Right.
Now that was like in probably 2020, and now here we are. There are no plastic bags. Now, we can't take credit for that. However, we started a conversation. We started building awareness. The state, fortunately, got on board. And, you know, but I think if any of us reflect on some of the accomplishments that we've made as a state and a community, that's one small one. You know, we all are into reusable bags now. I mean,
yeah, it's very common now.
You know, almost every store you go, I have almost too many now at home.
Right.
But I think, you know, as much as you can, we all need to contribute. I think we also have to step back and say, well, we've made some steps
I think
forward.
I think what I'm trying to do with this show is to say, not this particular show, but A Slice of Life, is to say, everybody everybody can do something. You know, if it's putting up a birdhouse, or it's doing Project Feeder Watch, or putting up a native flower garden, everybody can do something. And
Yeah.
it's imperative that a lot of people do something.
Yeah.
And so I thank you for stepping up. And I believe you're a volunteer, is that correct?
Yeah, we are all volunteers, yep.
So kudos to the volunteers, and may I say, volunteers truly are the heart of many organizations, and so this show itself would not be able to go out on the air without volunteers.
Oh, wow.
And so if you got time, step up and get involved and stay involved. It can only be rewarding.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're
It can
right.
only be rewarding, and I believe that's it. I think, Christine, I thank you for coming on. You've done a lot to tell people what the Conservation Commission does, and for that, I thank you.
Oh, well, thank you
Thank
for
you very
having
much.
me.
So that's it. We're signing off, and until next time, have a good day.